Hey guys, it's Cam here. Welcome back to the Build Room. And in this week's episode, we are continuing the deoxidization of Doofa Now here behind me. It's looking pretty good, about 90% of the way there. So now it's time to finish off that prep, get some protective paint down on these surfaces and start some repairs. So stick around and check it out. All right, so first things first, what are we dealing with here? Now, if you guys have got the same amount of PTSD off the last episode that I did, you will have known that this wasn't in great shape. I've spent a couple of days stripping it back again and getting rid of all the rust. We're looking pretty good. There is still the metal etching or pitting that we had on the boot, but generally speaking, there's nothing but a little bit of flash rust on the surface of these things and then some structural stuff that I do need to repair. This wasn't caused by leaving it outside, obviously, but if I want to use this door, it is going to have to be fixed. I'm not happy with that. So in terms of the process to get it here, it involved a lot of rust converter. This is the Bodyworks deoxidizer. Used probably 1.8 litres of this so far. But when push came to shove, the best tools that I found were these guys here. So for the really heavily pitted and etched stuff, I used a strip it disc on my grinder. That was a pretty easy one. That really does cut through quickly, and with the strip it disc on, you're not taking material off, because the biggest thing here was how many times can I sand this before these panels are wafer thin? So I just didn't want to take any material off by using, say, like a flap disc on this. A flap disc takes off a lot of material. It would have been very, very abrasive, and it would have gouged the paint as well. So I would have been trying to fix that. Wire brush on my impact wrench. I like using an impact wrench rather than the drill, just because it's small and gets into tight places pretty easy, and it's a bit more lightweight. And then my 150mm electric DA. That thing is an absolute workhorse. Running that thing for like hours on end with no breaks. If you watched the last episode, I did get a new compressor as well, and I did a review on that and gave you guys a sneak peek of what this looked like. And now we're at a point where we're about 90% there. So the whole body has been stripped back, except for this little guy here, but you know, nice contrast. That's what it did look like. And yeah, that's the rest of the car now. This one, it's taken a hit on the front end at some point, and it actually bows out. So if we get quite low, you'll probably be able to see that the valance along the bottom of the car, that is lower here than is here. And what's happened is the guard has been kinked outwards, which has in turn lifted this area up and sets the valance off crooked. Now, while that is probably repairable, after all that I've gone through on this car, this is going to be a trophy, all right? That's going to go up on a wall somewhere, and we're going to use a different guard on the rest of the build. In addition to that, there is a couple of other areas that, you know, just need going over. So as I said, there's a little bit of light flash rusting. This has been in bare metal now for a couple of days, but that's to be expected. I'm not worried about that. The last thing I do before I etch prime this will be to run over it with some more rust converter and then use some either wax and grease remover or methylated spirits to clean all that off, and then straight down with the paint so that there's nothing underneath. But there will also need to be a spot check, because there will be certain areas, and I found one before. Let me find it. Just here. I'm not sure how well that will show up on camera, but there is just a little dot here where the rust has been a little bit deeper and it hasn't completely come out. So I'm gonna have to go around the whole car and look for anything like that and just tidy them up. There's obviously some areas like this that have some significant rust. That's a common spot, was there when I got the car. Those sorts of things we are gonna just etch prime over, and then we're gonna come back and do a repair once the metal is all protected. Similarly, the bonnet, I think the bonnet is too far gone, not in terms of the surface rust and the pitting, that doesn't bother me, but the next iteration of this car, in terms of its look, is going to involve paint, but it may not, haven't decided this yet, may not involve paint everywhere. And the bonnet is one of the areas where I wouldn't mind having some bare metal show, and especially along the front here. And so this damage, I tried to fix that with the spot welding dent puller, and I fixed it like 90%. That's okay for a skimmer bog now, and you know, you could paint this car and be quite happy with it, but bare metal is not gonna cut it. In addition to that, there's also some dents underneath the paint here that I fitted, so this isn't that great. I do have the original bonnet that came on this car, which I think the top may be okay. The carcass underneath has a little bit of rust, but for what I want it for, I'm happy with a little bit of rust. I just swapped this one on so that when I got this licensed, I wouldn't have any problems with someone picking up rust in the structure of the bonnet. So yeah, like I said, the plan for today is to get some etch primer onto this thing and then start some of the repairs. So it will be a 2-pack etch primer that we put down, and that etch primer is suitable to have filler put over the top. And then we'll come back after that and we'll put a 2K high solids primer over everything else. So all of that filler will be sandwiched between 2 layers of 2-pack primer, and then it'll be ready for block sanding and some color. Now, in a bit of a quandary at the moment, the bonnet that I have is in the storage unit, and I don't have a single car that is capable of getting a full bonnet into it or on top of it. So what we're gonna do is we are gonna put some etch primer on this bonnet now, just to protect it while it goes into storage. And then we're driving this thing down and we're gonna swap the bonnet there and bring it back with the old bonnet on it. So yeah, let's get that out of the way now. The etch primer that I use on this is only going to be a single pack spray can product just for this area here, because with the amount of repairs I'm gonna have to do on this later, there's no point putting an expensive 2K product down. And also there's a lot more prep and I gotta clean out my guns and all that sort of thing. So rattle can job with some etch primer for now. It'll go into storage where it's dry and warm, so don't have to worry about rust really. The etch primer is really just on there to you know, stop fingerprints and stuff like that reacting with the metal and causing that rust. So yeah, let's get this masked up to protect all the bare metal, and then we will give it a spray. All right, we'll just give this 5 minutes to dry and then we'll throw the first coat of etch on. All right, so we'll give this a second to dry and then we will get it unmasked. Man, look at that. That is like cottage cheese. Ugh. All right, so that looks pretty good. In terms of the corrosion, you can only very, very mildly see where the pitting was. And to be honest, that was such a light coat of primer over that whole thing. There's not a lot of paint on there at all. Clearly the pitting wasn't that deep. So yeah, this one's gonna go off to storage, and hopefully the green one that we bring back, when we strip it down, won't have a bunch of dents, but we won't know that until we do it. So let's get moving. We can swap that nice and fast like this. All right, so we're back. We've done the bonnet switcheroo. That was done in record time. It honestly looks better than I remember. On the top of it, there's only a couple of small dents. There's one here, and I think there's another pin dent somewhere. And there's a bunch of these little burn throughs. I don't know why those have rusted there. Maybe they were stone chips or something that just got worse over time or something like that, but they are pitted. So if I go bare metal finish, they're probably gonna show through to some degree. The main issue with this and why it wasn't on the car was just the back of it. There's a lot of surface rust in these areas. And then as we come down to the bottom, I don't know how well you'll be able to see that, but a lot of pitting and some blow throughs there. And then on the other side, there is some big holes here where it's only a hole in the bottom skin. The top skin looks okay, but I don't know how that would have gone through on the inspection. So decided just to go the safe way and use my other bonnet. For now, probably just going to strip this thing back and check what condition it's in, because the other bonnet looked pretty good until I stripped it back, and then there was obviously that damage up front and things like that. It's really hard to see damage here because obviously it's covered by that skeleton behind it. And just generally, you can have a dent in there that I wouldn't want showing on bare metal, but with a skim of bog, you don't really see it from the other side. So, you know, it can be tricky. I don't know what I'm gonna get here, to be honest. In addition to that, we've also picked up a couple of our old friends from Violet Crumbles. That is both front guards. Now, these ones have rust in the bottom sections where they all get them. That's honestly not too hard to repair, and it's in an area that's gonna be you know, out of your eye line most times anyway. The rest of the guards actually looks pretty good, but there is a lot of material on here and it obviously wasn't done well. I mean, if you have your car resprayed and they don't even bother to take off the indicators, that's a surefire sign that this was a very cheap respray. There's also the fact that these weigh an absolute metric ton. Like, I'm not gonna throw it on scales, but that feels about twice as heavy as a normal Celica guard. So there is obviously a heap of spray putty. They look okay from the back. In fact, they look pretty good from the back, but there is some cracking. See down there? See that paint there? You can see the reflection of my beautiful safety sandals, but also there's a lot of cracks in the paint here. And that usually happens in areas where there is really thick material or a lot of bog. So yeah, next stage is going to be to strip the paint off the bonnet and both the guards and just see where we're at and see whether we've got something that we can expose a bit of skin on or whether we're going the whole hog and giving this thing a shiny new coat. right, so the bonnet's all stripped. Looking good, looking really good actually. So, you know, there's a dent here that we knew about coming into this. I managed to get, you know, all of the rust out of the vents and things like that. All of the rust that was prevalent. These areas here that were the rusty bits that we knew were gonna be pitted, they are pitted, but they might be workable, I'm not sure. Realistically, across the rest of the panel, there's not much in terms of damage. Along the front lip, there's a series of areas that look like they've, you know, sort of the bonnet's been lent on something or knocked into something sharp a few times. Just little straight line punches into the lip. But to be honest, this is a really great conditioned skin. Finished with the guards as well. They are a mixed bag, so let's go have a look at them. And on this fender, we knew we had rust holes at the bottom. Most of the panel is pretty decent. This has all been sort of 40 and 80, but you can see, oh, if they show up, there's some deeper scratches here. There's obviously been a bunch of dents on this panel, and whoever did the body work probably went through with a metal file at the end and flattened these things out, which is kind of cool. You know, there's no dent here, so they did a good job to get this out. Unfortunately, those big gouges are probably going to show up under clear, but regardless of that, this one on the end, just brush this off. This is not great. It's obviously had an impact here on the front. It's been fairly heavily metalworked through here. It's actually split here. It's been welded through here. So yeah, fairly heavily worked. It looks like they've got it reasonably straight. But again, if I'm looking at something that I might end up exposing the metal on, this is not great. It's usable, so I'm not going to discount it at the moment, but I am also going to strip this one and I'm going to see if it's any better, because while there's some pretty big surface rust here, if we can get through the rest of that panel without major damage and we just have to fix the bottom, which you have to fix in them all, and this one up here, we might be okay. And then there's this one. And this one I wanted to save to last because this, coming from Violet Crumbles, is absolutely unbelievable. This is the closest that I've seen to a cherry panel in a very long time. Apart from the fact that there's obviously been a dent here, and again, this has been metal worked. There's a couple of really minor dents, actually really difficult to see. I'll maybe not get them on camera. Oh, there's one just there. So that's obviously been hit from behind, but I reckon I can probably just give that a really light tap down. So yeah, I'm gonna get this panel scuffed now and then put to the side. This one will go to the side as well as a backup. We'll start stripping this. The bonnet will go to the side, and we're also gonna do the doors. So yeah, I'm gonna have to cram 4 doors in here. So yeah, it's time for one of these. All right, so doors are stripped, and yeah, they look pretty garbage, to be honest. There's nothing here that's getting me excited. One of the doors is okay. We'll get down to that in a sec. But you look, this is the first one that I stripped. There was the one with the big areas of paint missing that would rusted through, obviously, and these areas here. We got fairly big dents there and there. We've got a big chunk of rust missing. But in addition to that, there's just dents all over this thing. Really, the only good thing on this door is some of this metal at the top. It's something that if I wanted to make a patch panel out of, potentially I can use some metal from there. If we go into this one, again, this one was also a basket case. I just gave up, I stopped sanding. Even the top metal, there's, you know, maybe a small piece here and a little bit down the back that we could use. The thing that is reasonable on this is the front section. So if we were to cut from here to here, everything forward would be pretty usable. In fact, I could probably de-skin it from the edges and we just have to run a weld line over the top. This door, this is probably the pick of the bunch. Dent-wise, it's actually really good. There's a couple of little dents here, but they're nothing major. In fact, those I could probably pull with the spot welding dent puller and get them almost perfect. And there's some rust areas. This was a pop riveted on panel. When I say panel, I think it's probably made out of an old oil can or something like that. But that could be cut out and we could put a panel in there. We could do the same here. Up the top, I lifted this up before. Again, a panel hiding a big rusted out mess underneath all the way along. So that would have to be repaired, but the rest of the panel looks pretty good. So we've got some options there. And then this one, this is one I'd stripped before when I was doing the previous setup for that. And it's got a couple of things on it. It's a pretty good looking door overall. If I was not looking for bare metal, I would be quite happy. There's a patch needed here. There's a small dent up there, which I could probably fix. But up here, there is a pretty sizable dent. If I could get to the back of it, I could probably hammer and dolly it. but with the side impact protection bar that goes through here on the back, you just can't get into it from the rear without de-skinning the whole panel. And again, up the top, we have some form of thin aluminium that has been riveted on to cover up another mess of rust. So yeah, none of the doors are that good. That is life. On the upside, the fender came out really quite good. So this area, I've just cleaned the rust up with the strip it disc just to have a look at it. Probably get a hammer and dolly onto that and clear it up pretty nicely. We had some rust down the bottom. That can be probably just cut out and patched. I think is probably the easiest way to deal with that. The only real pain is on the top here. So yeah, something has sort of scraped across the top there and put a big divot in it. Again, I can get to the back of it, so probably a candidate for hammer and dollying. And generally, while there is a lot of work here left to do, it's not insurmountable. The main problem I'm running into is time. So it is 10 a.m. on Saturday morning, and that's a week before Turtle's in the park. So realistically, I have 8 days, and only 3 of those are days that I could do a full day work. The rest of it will be what I can squeeze in outside of work hours to get this thing into a state where I can take it down. At this point, unless we really make some good progress today, I think we're gonna struggle to get paint on this thing. So yeah, got some metal work to do now, so it's time to break out the grinders and the welder, and we'll just see what we can get done today. We'll have a metalwork montage now, and then we'll come back with final thoughts on how we can move this thing forward. All right, so that is our bottom of the door patch. Don't worry about this little bit of pitting here. That was on the original panel, and this area is going to be painted, so I'm not too worried about this. In fact, I was originally just going to bog that up, as I was with that, but you know, as usual, things get out of hand. But other than that, this looks really good. It's not perfectly flat, but there's good transitions between the original metal and the patch. So yeah, it's not really that bad at all. Coming around here, and this one came out, I would say, even better. It's really, really hard, especially through here, to see where the actual panel has been replaced. There's plenty of structure in this now, which is good. Without that bar behind, the tops of these are really flimsy, so that is in place. I do have to flip this over and weld the back of it as well, just onto the original metal here and the original metal here on the back side. There's not really much metal left in either of those spots, but I will find some spots to tack it in. So yeah, overall, I would say a success, but I am running out of time for today and I've got to edit a video. So there is one thing that I did want to check before I pack this up for the night, finish out the episode and bring Doofa in so that it doesn't surface rust overnight. And that is to see if we can finish an area of this metal so that it A, hides this patch a little bit better maybe, but also we see if we're going to be able to get that brushed steel finish that I really want. This has no pitting on it other than here, so it's a really good section to test on. So what I'm going to do is tape it out so we can see the difference from one side to the other, and then we're going to give this a 80 grit, 120, 240, and then we're going to run over it with the Scotch-Brite and see if we can get some lines into it. All right, that was 80, 120. All right, 240 now. All right, that's looking reasonably shiny. You can see the outline of the steel a lot more now, but it is quite smooth. Any more than that and you're never gonna get clear to stick to this anyway. So let's try and profile it now with the Scotch-Brite and see how we go. All right, that's a pretty big difference. That is far more polished than I thought it was going to come up, but I don't know how well it'll show up on camera, but there is a distinct grain there. Not as much as I would like to see, to be honest. I think the Scotch-Brite is just a little too soft. This is using the red Scotch-Brite. I've got a green, but I think the red may actually be the coarser of the two. You can get sandpaper flap discs for these. So that could be an option if I got a 120 or an 80 grit flap disc on this and then did the same thing, would probably get a much stronger grain effect. But those are gonna be a couple of weeks away by Amazon because apparently even though Bunnings sells the Metabo one of these, no one close by stocks these, so I'm gonna have to get them express freighted in. Look, I think it's interesting, and one of the things I want for Doofa, obviously, is it's going to shows and things and it's going to be representing the build room. I would like something different. So to me, this is pretty cool. There's not too many cars outside of DeLoreans that are running a brushed metal finish. So I do think it would help the car stand out. It wouldn't be only this color on the car, obviously. I am planning on a livery. I will take you guys through that in the next episode, but I do think this would really add something to it. But for now, Doofa's getting cold outside, so it's time to bring him in. All right, so we made a lot of progress in this episode, but not as much as I would have liked. Target for this episode was to get all of the metalwork done and a little bit of primer on this thing so that we could make sure we're making enough progress to get the Toyotas in the park. Now, there is pretty much zero chance of this thing getting finished metalwork, primed, painted, reassembled and cleaned, ready for next Sunday. So unfortunately, that means I've got to make a decision here. Now this is probably going to split camps here. A lot of people want to see the car Toyotas in the park. A lot of people just want to see the thing finished and painted. And you know, I understand the enthusiasm for that. The issue is though, if I just keep pushing at this, what I'm going to do is dodgy a whole bunch of stuff up and just bog everything and then flick it with paint. It won't be particularly nice. And While this isn't going to be a finished product paint job, so obviously in the last episode, there was the question of, does it stay bare metal and get clear coated, or does it get painted? And a lot of people wanted to get painted. Now, I took that on board and we worked out a paint scheme that was gonna do both, but it wasn't gonna be the final paint scheme for this car. I don't think I'll ever sell this thing, which means sooner or later, this is gonna get a full rotisserie rebuild and it'll be fully painted to what I would consider show condition. There's a couple of caveats there though. Violet Crumbles is currently on the rotisserie, so this can't get that level of paint job until Violet Crumbles is down. The other thing is, the true spirit of Doofa is having a little bit of fun with this thing in the meantime. So I don't want to just paint it all one color, polish it up and have it look nice, but not great. Instead, we're going to do something a little bit different. I'll show you the end game of that in the next episode. But for now, the plan is we're still going to get it to Toyotas in the park, but it's just going to be mostly bare metal. But I promise I will protect it as soon as I get it home, and it won't leave the garage again until it's got paint. So yeah, that's going to end it for today. Just the standard things. If you're new to the channel, I'm going to put the full Violet Crumble series up here, and I'm going to put some other cool content down here. Other than that, I just want to say thanks for watching. I'll see you next time on the Build Room. Bye for now.